me now come to Janine. Janine, you're also Australian by birth, I understand, now living many, many years in Europe. And you have now started, I can say, this international for Future movement. You've also prepared a small presentation that you want to share with us?
Yep. Okay, wait a second. I need to take the screen down. Screen. Stop broadcast. Right there. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it looks good.
Yep. Okay. I won't try and find the presentation mode. I don't know that I'll be able to do it. There's a lot of words here, but basically, first is to introduce myself. I'm an electronic engineer. I have an MBA. I studied engineering in Australia, and then did Master of Business, so basically economics, in Australia and Sweden. I worked as an engineer with Ericsson and came to Sweden. I also worked with for quite some time, NEC, so I worked in Japan as well. In any case, when Greta came on the 20th of August, 2018, I then heard about her within a week and went and videotaped her. And then gradually we built, well, she started what I would call the School Strike for Climate movement, which is very much associated with school students. And then there was a group which started Fridays for Future, which is actually, in some countries, actually classified as the School Strike for Climate movement. But in many countries, it is actually broad age. And the goal was to be broad age because Greta clearly said, everybody's welcome, everybody's needed. And that is very true in climate. We need to be everybody as much as we can. One of the key things I have done in this movement, not the only thing, but one of the key things is to concentrate on what I call the social feedback loops. So look at how we grow the movement, okay? One of the key tricks, or one of the very early things which Greta did, which was brilliant, was that she did something which is regular, which had respect, it was easy to recognize, and created what I would call a religious style ritual, and had a lot of gratitude around that. I don't know if you know the TED Talk with the shirtless dancing guy. It's 3 minutes long. It's worth definitely watching twice. And it is about how to make something simple for everybody to follow you. So the second social feedback loop is actually the simplicity. So it's making simple steps so everybody can just join, but they need to join regularly and they need to join easily. And they need, so it's both simplicity, which is important, and on top of that, it needs to be easy to promote. So that's another social feedback loop. So they need to be able to see themselves and others to see them. So therefore the map is incredibly important to help people, everybody see each other. And that's the third social feedback loop, is to actually see that I'm one of those pins, okay? You know, even though there's 1,000 or actually 5,000 pins up there, I'm actually one of those. And if you press on the pin, you can actually get the person's email address. That has been another key social feedback loop, where people, a journalist would see a striker, you know, at the local school or at their town hall, and they'd come to their editor and say, I need to do an article about this. This is important. Many journalists at the grassroots level are actually very pro-climate, but the media industry is not. So the editor says, no, but that's just local. And so with the map, you can, within an hour or two, contact anything between 2 or half a dozen other strikers in different parts of the world, say from Korea, from South Africa, from the US, and then you can have an interview with 4 different strikers with a couple of hours work. And then you come back to your editor and say, but This strike is global. That's new. So you just broke through the glass ceiling of the media industry. And that is one of the things I think very, very key in both the school strike and the Fridays for Future movements. All right, the final thing which I want to bring up as a social feedback loop is the data feedback. All right, so one of the key things as an electronic engineer, one of the key roles I took on with other engineers was to do the web page, create the map, and create feedback of data. So could people not just see themselves on the map, they could see growth. They could see that there was more people coming on board. This is a picture from the web page with the statistics. And if you look carefully at the first, on the top one, you see the countries, okay, and that's gradually grown. You actually see it bumping slightly every time there's a major strike. So there's quarterly strikes, which are very large, and then there's weekly strikes, which have slow growth. Even then, when you look at the number of cities, they also grow and then bump up with the quarterly strikes. The number of events as well, and as well as the total number of strikers. So this is key for people to be able to then see, oh, well, you know, it's not just tapering off, okay? Clearly, COVID has been a challenge, don't get me wrong. It's not a trivial challenge, but still, I think we can all recognize that social media and the online work has also exploded. And each person can, via these techniques, see themselves as the one person contributing to the many. And that creates solidarity. And this, I believe, is a value which people who don't necessarily put their elbows out and push themselves forward need to have. So it sort of matches Tian's talk about Australia and the women being dominant in this industry, and the cooperative, the company is a cooperation where many people are working part-time but still seeing their value, and creating structures so that people can be both volunteers as well as work to create, to participate without having this requirement, I have to be full-time, 40 hours, and strict frames, which I don't necessarily believe fits everybody. And that I think is key in bringing women forward. I think I'll hand it back there.
Thanks so much. That's really an impressive story. I mean, we all know that the result that millions of people are now have joined that climate movement, and it's a great success. I think we in the renewables community are very grateful about this movement. Let me just underline that. But let me ask you one question now. You spoke at the end of your introduction about the role of women, but did you have that in mind when you started developing such a strategy, that how to specifically also involve women, and that did you expect that women would play such an important role in this movement?
The best way to put it is, before Greta started in 2018, I had no idea she was going to start. I had no idea it would be a young girl. I had no idea of anything. I had my wishes, okay? I had been looking for a strike. I am born in Melbourne, where and I studied at Victoria University and walked past the 888 sign, which is 8 hours play, 8 hours work, and 8 hours rest sign, which I think Melbourne was the first city in the world to have that frame for working. So striking has been a big part of my culture. The fact that it was a girl, the fact that what I would call movement process is dominated by women has been something which I have thought about a long, long time. And I'm an engineer, I'm a technical person. I'm actually not a socialist, or socialist is the wrong word, a sociologist. And so I think these questions are fascinating, but I'm not really skilled to answer, except to say from my experience is it's really important to find ways to keep that inclusion and value that inclusion, find ways to show that inclusion and lift, like, for example, for a year and a half, I ran weekly meetings, Sunday night, 7 o'clock, for between an hour and 2 hours with anybody in the world who wanted to talk about Fridays for Future. And a lot of it was young people, but it was definitely half not young. But I would try and give the moderator role away. I would try and share it around because, I was running the meeting. I could do what I had that choice. I regularly chose a female girl, a young girl, because I thought, well, they need that experience. Maybe they don't get that because in the classroom, somebody nudges them out of the way with their elbows out. I'm not sure, but I do believe the competition doesn't necessarily encourage women to step up. Whereas I think community, gratitude, cooperation, part-time, and you can just have a try, often is a mentorship process which helps a lot. And as a female engineer, I can answer those questions relatively very well from your previous session about how you get put down all the time and, the only woman in the room all the time. And you have to get your elbows out, right? You have to be there with your elbows out. If you're not prepared to do that, you will just be trodden on the whole time. But you have to know some environments you need that and some environments you don't. Like when I was at Telstra, one guy threw a chair in a meeting across the room, right? Not at me, but he did do it, okay? And that to me is such a violent act. I didn't want to be in the room. I didn't want to even be participating, And that, I think, is a natural process that we are either conditioned into, or because we're actually physically smaller, we naturally jump to. We go under the desk rather than stand up. And so the teaching women to stand up in the economic environment, which is very much an elbows out environment, is difficult.
Well, thanks so much. I understand you. It's not part of the kind of very analytical concept that you presented initially, but we have to go a bit deeper to understand what really makes that difference, and that we should certainly. And I think community energy offers such opportunities.